Good morning. Welcome to Second Unitarian Church. I'm Susan Heyer, a member of the church's Board of Trustees. My pronouns are she, her, hers. Today we're meeting virtually using Zoom, and we ask everyone's indulgence for the complications of a Zoom service. We're glad you're here. In Zoom, the chat feed is available to say hello and share your joys and concerns at that time in the service. You can also use Zoom closed captioning through the live transcript option. When we sing together and read in unison, you're encouraged to do so as well, even though you are masked or on mute. Our voices echo through the world, so we will hear one another if we listen closely and sing with our full spirit. We are paying close attention to COVID recommendations, and this could mean changes at any time. But for now, we recognize that maintaining physical distance is an act of love and protection. We especially welcome newcomers this morning. We're excited to have you and look forward to getting to know you. If you're new to us today, you're welcome to note that in the Zoom chat. Our worship today is led by Reverend Julie Taylor. Reverend Julie Taylor is a Unitarian Universalist community minister specializing in critical incident response, community crisis, and pastoral care. Reverend Taylor is the Senior Director of Contextual Ministry and an affiliate professor at Meadville Lombard Theological School. Agitating, preaching, and working towards dismantling systems of white supremacy are key in Reverend Taylor's theology and work. Carl Kennedy and Laura McKee provide our music today. Every service at Second Unitarian Church is unique, and today is no different. Our time together requires a large group of people who make possible the worship, music, and technical production. We thank them for their service to our congregation. You can find additional announcements and more information in your order of service. I now welcome Margot Horn, our worship associate, to lead our call to worship.
Our words come from Reverend Sean Parker Dennison, How to Survive the Apocalypse. First, learn to listen, not only for enemies around corners and hidden places, but for the faint footsteps of hope and the whisper of resistance. Hone your skills, aim your heart towards kindness, and stockpile second chances. Under the weight of destruction, we will need the strong shelter of forgiveness and the deeper wells that give the sweet water of welcome. We have a place for you. When the world ends, we must not add destruction to destruction, not to accept the beggar's bargain, to fight death with more death. In order to survive the apocalypse, any apocalypse at all, we have to give up the counterfeit currency of self-sufficiency, the mistaken addiction to competition, the lie that the last to die has somehow survived. I invite you, as you feel ready, to take a breath in and out. As the music begins, let us enter into our service together.
Yes. we would be reminded here of our highest aspirations and inspired to bring our gifts of love and service to the altar of humanity. May we know once again that we are not isolated beings, but connected in a mystery and a miracle to the universe, to this community, and to each other. Let us light the chalice together.
Please join me and rise in body or spirit and sing our first hymn, For All That Is Our Life. For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad. For needs which others serve, for services we give, for work and its rewards, for hours of rest and love, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life. For sorrow we must bear, for failures, pains, and loss, for each new thing we learn, for fearful hours that pass, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life. For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift that we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad.
Please join me in reciting our covenant. The words are on your screen. We covenant to build a community that challenges us to grow and empowers us to honor the truth within ourselves. We will be generous with our gifts and honest in our communication, holding faithful to a love that embraces both diversity and conflict. Called by our living tradition, we will nurture spirituality within a vision of the eternal, living out our inner convictions through struggles for justice and acts of compassion.
Please join in singing our congregational hymn, Spirit of Life.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Root Holy Ghost, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Good morning, everyone. Our story for all ages this morning is by Doreen Rappaport and is illustrated by Brian Collier. Martin Luther King Jr. Day is tomorrow, Monday, January 17th, and this text is a reminder that we can all use big words to make big justice in the world. Everywhere in Martin's hometown, he saw the signs white only. His mother said these signs were in all southern cities and towns in the United States. Every time Martin read the words, he felt bad until he remembered what his mother had told him. You are as good as anyone. In church, Martin sang hymns, he read from the Bible, he listened to his father preach. These words made him feel good. When I grow up, I'm going to get big words too. Martin grew up. He became a minister like his father, and he used the big words he had heard as a child from his parents and from the Bible. Everyone can be great. He studied the teachings of Mahatma Gandhi. He learned how the Indian nation won freedom without ever firing a gun. Martin said love when others said hate. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. He said together when others said separate. He said peace when others said war. Sooner or later, all the people of the world will have to discover a way to live together. In 1955, on a cold December day in Montgomery, Alabama, Rosa Parks was coming home from work. A white man told her to get up from her seat so he could sit. She said no and was arrested. Montgomery's Black citizens learned of her arrest. It made them angry. They decided not to ride the buses until they could sit anywhere they wanted. For 381 days, they walked to work and school and church. They walked in rain and cold and in blistering heat. Martin walked with them and talked with them and sang with them and prayed with them until the white city leaders had to agree they could sit anywhere they wanted. When the history books are written, someone will say there lived Black people who had the courage to stand up for their rights. In the next 10 years, Black Americans all over the South protested for equal rights. Martin walked with them and talked with them and sang with them and prayed with them. White ministers told them to stop. Mayors and governors and police chiefs and judges ordered them to stop, but they kept on marching. Wait! For years, I have heard the word wait. We have waited more than 340 years for our rights. They were jailed and beaten and murdered, but they kept on marching. Some Black Americans wanted to fight back with their fists. Martin convinced them not to by reminding them of the power of love. Love is the key to the problems of the world. Many white Southerners hated and feared Martin's words. A few threatened to kill him and his family. His house was bombed. His brother's house was bombed, but he refused to stop. Remember, if I am stopped, this movement will not be stopped because God is with this movement. The marches continued. More and more Americans listened to Martin's words. He shared his dreams and filled them with hope. I have a dream that one day in Alabama, little Black boys and Black girls will join hands with little white girls and little white boys as sisters and brothers. After 10 years of protests, the lawmakers in Washington voted to end segregation. The white-only signs in the South came down. You gotta be kidding me. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. cared about all Americans. He cared about people all over the world, and people all over the world admired him. In 1964, he won the Nobel Peace Prize. He won it because he taught others to fight with words, not fists. Martin went wherever people needed help. In April 1968, he went to Memphis, Tennessee. He went to help garbage collectors who were on strike. He walked with them and talked with them and sang with them and prayed with them. On his second day there, he was shot. He died. His big words are alive for us today. Thank you for listening and seeing our story today.
Each year, we all make a commitment, a pledge to support the ministry of our church. In addition to this contribution, each Sunday we take a collection so that we can share with those doing justice beyond our church community. While we are unable to come together in person, you can still share your resources. To make your contribution, you can send a text and follow prompts. We will have the number on your screen as the music plays for the offertory. Text and follow prompts. For the month of January, we are inviting the church's generosity through our plate share to the Midwest Access Coalition. The Midwest Access Coalition is a Chicago-based abortion fund that assists low-income individuals seeking abortion care traveling to, from, or within the Midwest. It can provide transportation, gas reimbursement, lodging, meals, medication, childcare, and emotional support. Please welcome Marie Kahn, Midwest Action Coalition's Director of Programs.
Hello, thank you all so much. Thank you, Margot. I really appreciate, Mac really appreciates you including us and letting us come in and talk to you too about specific aspects of our organization and the type of support that we provide. As an introduction, yes, my name is Marie. I've been with Midwest Access Coalition since 2016. And in that capacity, I work directly with the pregnant folks that are traveling, as you mentioned, to, from, and within the Midwest. While a lot of us are based in Chicago or have lived there, I'm from Wisconsin originally and lived in Chicago for 10 years and I worked at UIC. We work with folks across the Midwest and and within that, it's folks that are in the Dakotas, folks that are in Iowa, and then we have folks that have to leave, which I'll talk about because I'm going to talk about the barriers today that folks seeking abortion care face. There's lots of folks that have to leave the regions they're in now and come to Illinois specifically to seek abortion care because of the somewhat more compassionate viewpoints legislatively we have for folks. So thank you so much for including us. The types of areas that we fund broadly, as you talked about, are travel support, and that includes round trip gas funding, bus, plane, train tickets. We also do lodging, which often is a hotel, but can look like some other types of things too. And then childcare and food support. And I think of these as really the basic floor level human rights that anyone should expect to have support and services in. And we know that that doesn't exist in this country at all. And like at minimum, we can be there to meet folks where they're at and accompany them through this process of getting an abortion, which could be 1 to 4 days, depending on the nature of their pregnancy and the medical needs they have, and also affected by state legislation and state requirements. So all of that goes to making someone maybe travel more, leave their state, need a hotel, while they're trying to access safe abortion care. In terms of travel, it's becoming more and more common for folks to have to fly to access care, folks who are flying to access care to have to leave their home area. We've had a couple of folks in the last week that had to fly up to Chicago to access care because they're Texans and they are, past they're 7 weeks or more pregnant in their state. So now they have to come up to other cities and other areas to try to access care. And these are Texans that already in Texas would have been hitting huge hurdles to access abortion care, both for the cost of that, but then also the distances people drive. We provide gas funding to folks. Sometimes it needs to be upfront before they're coming to their appointment. And then other times we can have funding at the clinic. Nicole Lopez, who talked last week to you all, she's on our tech side. And she's one of the main people that created the lockbox, which is literal physical money that is at, I think we're at 7 or 8 clinics now. And that's a unique side to MAC and a unique side to practical support within abortion. And at large, I think that should be talked about more. Like, individuals deserve to be trusted to receive funding. And so we try to do that as much as possible, not through gift cards or Visa cards, like all of those things assist and help, but we try to meet someone right where they're at and get them safely to the next step of their destination. So often that's sending gas funding. It's also booking bus, plane, and train tickets. If someone hasn't flown before, we walk them through that process. We're explaining to them what's going to occur with security, what's going to happen once they get off the plane and they need to look for their bags, or they need to try to navigate ride shares and find taxis. So these are all things that an everyday person would be stressed about trying to navigate and have to do. And now this is someone who oftentimes hasn't flown before, hasn't had to travel for medical care this far, perhaps hasn't been getting medical care, prenatal care to begin with during the pregnancy. So there's lots of folks who are traveling that might have other medical contexts and needs that should be addressed that haven't been able to. And that is the situation people are flying, driving under, and we're there to support them. We also have volunteer drivers, which within COVID has been reduced, but we still need them sometimes. When someone's having an abortion procedure with sedation, they need a valued, trusted person there. And that's a big barrier for someone to not be able to access care. If they don't have a known person to sign them out, clinics cannot provide care due to legal requirements in their states and the nature of how clinics are set up and physically where they're located. Housing is a critical area as well that we see as one of the big barriers that can stop or prevent someone from getting an abortion. I'm always in awe of Midwesterners. Like, we are very resilient. Lots of folks are like, nah, I have no problem, sleeping in my car in order to accomplish something else. But that can't happen when someone's there getting abortion care. We want folks in safe spaces where therapeutically they can relax, where they can get some sleep. And so to alleviate that type of barrier, we are able to book credit hotels for folks with our organizational credit cards. And that's actually incredibly helpful, because if you're underbanked, which a lot of the folks within the Midwest are that we work with, and communities that are coming to the Midwest for care, we don't have a credit card, the ability to rent a safe hotel is really, really difficult. And so by not having that plastic, people are put in spaces that aren't safe. They're limited in their options. So we work with hotels that are near their clinics. We work with Airbnbs and a couple of volunteer hosts to make sure that whether it is a young person who's under age 18 that needs support, someone who needs to have an accessible room at a hotel, or someone that maybe is utilizing a different language than English, and we want to make sure that they're taken care of and safe throughout the abortion process. We also fund childcare. This is an area that we saw as really one of the crucial limitations for folks getting abortion care. Pregnant people do so much to access care. They move mountains, they're amazing. But if you can't get someone to watch your child like that, that is often the no point. Like, you don't want to compromise the safety of your child while you're trying to get abortion care, healthcare that is going to help you continue to be the parent you want to be, the parent that you are. So we try to support that as much as possible by providing funding, either sending it electronically to folks or having it at clinics to support babysitting costs, which it's not the best. The best situation would be, oh, hey, we have a babysitting arrangement in all these major cities. Then you can safely drop off your child and pick them up. That would be amazing. But as other areas of reproductive justice and other care collectives and different models come forward, this is how we've worked with that need so far. I know I will hop off soon so you all can continue in the service, but I did want to mention a couple of the barriers that clients face that I see hit them. State laws, obviously in the Midwest, Illinois has become an area that folks from Ohio and Indiana that have mandatory waiting periods will come to seek care. You have to wait between 48 and 72 hours in those states to access care. And that's an ideal situation because people's lives are complex, and your appointments might be compartmented out over a month. There's also there's contexts legislatively like Texas where abortion is banned in Texas. Like I know Roe hasn't technically legally fallen, but when a huge swath of the country and the community it's illegal for, that in my mind is Roe having fallen. So that in and of itself is a huge barrier to accessing care. There are organizations, fake clinics, crisis pregnancy centers that can create confusion for pregnant people, especially in states that have laws that are more supportive of them. There are areas that will utilize particular views of religion and Christianity to advance their desire for the person to stay pregnant and not look at abortion as an option. And so these are a barrier that we see because for a lot of the folks that come and reach out to us for MAC support and assistance, as I mentioned before, they haven't gotten prenatal care. They haven't gotten other types of support they should have received throughout their pregnancy. So fake clinics come in as a situation that is there where someone thinks, oh, I'm going to get quality ultrasound care. I'm going to be able to have these types of needs that I have met, and that doesn't always happen. And then I would round out too by like reminding folks of the violence that pregnant people face and experience. When it becomes known that someone's pregnant, statistically, the odds of violence happening on their body go up. And we have folks come to us through Midwest Access Coalition who are in spaces like that. So that is a very critical and important part of practical support to work with that pregnant person, meet them where they're at, and then conquer those barriers that have been put in front of them. And I hope that this discussion gives you a good idea of what those areas are. I want to thank you all too for supporting MAC. We've had fundraisers at your church. It's a beautiful, welcoming space. I personally grew up in a very conservative church, and it's taken me a long time to realize that it does not need to be that way, that there's churches and communities like all of you all who do see people as human beings and see areas that need to be supported that aren't political, that aren't religious, that exist and are fact. So thank you all so much for including and supporting MAC and for inviting us to talk to y'all too.
Now I invite you to join me in reading our offertory words. The words are printed in your order of service and are on the screen. This church is the community of ourselves. Its energy and resources are our energy and resources. Its wealth is what we share. As we contribute to the life of this community, we affirm it and enable its participation in the larger world around us. The offering will now be generously given and gratefully received.
I invite you now into the spirit of prayer and meditation. Let us start by breathing together. Take a breath in and out. We begin in thanks, thankful for the breath in our lungs, the beauty of our earth, the strength of this community. We hold in our hearts those who care for family in ill health, those who live with grief or chronic pain, those struggling with addiction or illness, seen and unseen. We are with you. For parents and teachers and all those whose primary spiritual practice is caring for children, we are with you. We pray for our neighbors in prison, for those who are struggling to stay afloat amidst poverty. We are with you. We pray for all those living in harm's way. We pray for our planet and commit to work that will lead us away from the harms of climate change. We pray that wisdom, compassion, and empathy guide the leaders of our world. May they and we be instruments of a just and lasting peace. Our lives are blessed by those who knowingly, with curiosity and courage, face their final days. For those locked in concentration camps at the border, held in cages and inhumane conditions, for those in ICE detention centers here in Chicago, we are with you and we commit to doing more. For those struggling with fear and anxiety right now, we offer our prayers of comfort and care. For those who face the loss of a job, financial resources, and security right now, we offer solidarity and a commitment to share what we can. For those struggling with the impact of isolation, we promise to reach out with love. Into this shared silence, I invite you now to speak the name of anyone you wish to lift up into the loving support of this community. With our deepest compassion, let us hold in our hearts those named and unnamed, those remembered and those forgotten. Let it be so. Amen. Blessed be. At this time, Laura will light 2 candles, one representing the joys and celebrations we are experiencing, and the other representing the concerns and sorrows we are holding. Thank you. I'm going to invite those of you on Zoom, which is all of us here today, to share your joys and concerns in our chat window. And we'll do that as music plays. We hold all these joys, celebrations, sorrows, and struggles close to our hearts.
Turn, turn, turn. To Everything There Is a Season by Pete Seeger, adapted from Ecclesiastes. To everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season. Turn, turn, turn. And a time for every purpose under heaven. A time to be born. A time to die. A time to plant. A time to reap. A time to kill, a time to heal, a time to laugh, a time to weep, a time to build up, a time to break down, a time to dance, a time to mourn, a time to cast away stones, a time to gather stones together, a time of war, a time of peace, a time of love, a time of hate, a time you may embrace, a time to refrain from embracing. To everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season. Turn, turn, turn. And a time for every purpose under heaven. A time to gain, a time to lose, a time to rend, a time to sow, a time to love, a time to hate, a time of peace. I swear it's not too late. Let us hear our anthem.
We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved. On our way to justice, we shall not be moved. On our way to justice, we shall not be moved, just like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved. On our way to freedom, we shall not be moved. On our way to freedom, we shall not be moved, just like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved. Fighting for our children, we shall not be moved. Fighting for our children, we shall not be moved, just like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's planted by the water. We
Thank you. Well, good morning. I am grateful to be here this morning, sharing this beautiful, if not chilly, morning here with all of you at Second Unitarian. Now, I want to try something, and I'm going to ask you all to go along with me here. This is a little different, probably, than most sermons in general, but certainly in an online virtual experience, this may seem a little odd, but just want to ask you to go with me here. And what I'm going to do is we're going to be singing at different points in the sermon here. We're going to sing the words of the prophetic philosopher and longtime Unitarian Universalist Pete Seeger. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time for every purpose under heaven. All right, so we're going to sing the chorus. And I'm guessing that most folks, and we're getting close to 100 people here. I'm going to guess that most folks on here gathered today probably know the tune, but if you don't, you're going to catch on pretty quick, because for better or for worse here, I'm going to sing it and y'all are going to hear it. So you're all going to keep your mute on, so you're going to be singing it in whatever space you're in, but just like we've been doing with the hymns, I'm going to invite you to sing out as it mentioned at the beginning. And again, for better or for worse, I guess because it's being recorded, I'm going to be recorded singing it, so I'm the main singer. That's just going to have to be what it's going to be. And so forgive me in advance, but we're all going to do our best with this. So you're going to catch on, I think, when I raise up my hands here like this, we're going to sing. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time for every purpose under heaven. All right? To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time for every purpose under heaven. So we're here at the beginning of January. It's the new year. New Year's has always been a bit of a mixed bag for me as far as holidays go. When I was younger in grade school, it was the one night a year that we got to stay up past our bedtimes. We would play games, eat popcorn, maybe even watch a movie if there was something good on one of the 3 or 4 channels we got back in way back in the day. With a minute left, we would count down to midnight, and then at midnight, we'd all go out on the front porch and bang pots and pans together, yelling, "Happy New Year!" It was a fun family time. Now, by the time I was in high school, I sometimes watched the ball drop on Dick Clark's Rockin' New Year's Eve, but there was nothing really much special about staying up late. And then I moved to New York City for college and lived there until about 10 years ago. Now, New York City, cool place to live, especially since you're already there for New Year's Eve, right? Dick Clark's Rockin' New Year's Eve right there. Yeah, not so much. In the 24 years that I lived in New York City, I never once went to see the ball drop in person. Now, when you're a New Yorker and you have to navigate the hordes of tourists and the drunks with all the noisemakers, most New Yorkers hate New Year's Eve. So, without those external traditions that I used to engage with and then again didn't all those years in New York, without those external traditions to mark this holiday as special for me, over the years, I've made a transition to think more about the smaller internal transitions. Examining, considering back over the year that's ending, and then thinking about what I'm grateful for and what I want to change in the new year. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time for every purpose under heaven. So it's a time to make lists, read about the top 10 best movies, the 7 biggest scandals, the 5 ways to lose that weight, 10 best KN95 masks. And then there's personal lists, right? The personal list that I've created for 2022, projects like winterizing the garage and organizing my basement. And then there's the big lifestyle lists, right? Throw out all the expired food in the pantry, eat healthier, exercise 5 times a week, stop procrastinating, do more to fight racial injustice and white privilege in myself and in my communities. Now, these lists aren't bad in and of themselves. And for many people, making lists is the best way to organize and prioritize. Now, I love making lists. I make lists on my phone. I make lists on my iPad, in paper notebooks, on slips of paper even. And then often I misplace them or I just forget to look at them. And still, I make the lists. And more often than not, that very act does help me get done what I need to get done. Now, the thing that lists don't do, at least for me, lists do not actually help me change. This is where the tradition of making New Year's resolutions has always fallen short for me. New Year's resolutions are a sort of list, a list of promises to do something to improve oneself or stop doing something to improve oneself. And this idea is not a bad custom. It's just that I've never found that making resolutions necessarily leads to me keeping them. According to a Wall Street Journal on willpower, 88% of New Year's resolutions are not kept. Neuroscientists suggest that the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain largely responsible for willpower, is also responsible for a myriad of other important tasks, and it can get overloaded just like any other system in the body. So asking it to, eat more vegetables or quit smoking or think positive or meditate more, become more organized, volunteer, watch less television, be more spiritual, get out of debt and learn a new language can be like asking for a brain freeze and will more likely get you in with that 88% that don't keep those New Year's resolutions here just a couple weeks into January. Changing old habits and taking on new ones takes time, it takes intention, it takes practice. And studies show that lasting change is more likely to come when you take one thing at a time and find social support. So the idea of making New Year's resolutions that actually lead to change, the change that I'm looking for me in my life, it might be possible if I stop thinking about resolutions as a list, but instead thinking about these things as a year-long project. And I also wonder, at least for myself, if I would be more successful in my desire to change, if I changed the focus from being me-centered to being others-centered. To quote Brittany Cooper, who tweets as Professor Crunk on Twitter, her quote, "What would it mean to make a list of resolutions that were less about self-improvement and more about fighting for justice?" Unquote. What would that mean, not just for me, but for the communities and for the ideals, for the principles that I hold dear? Besides scientific research, I also have the UU principle, the acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth, that principle. In my life, lasting change has always taken spiritual growth. So as a Unitarian Universalist, I am rooted in covenantal community. Often we work best when we work with others. So instead of rushing to get through my list of resolutions in the next few weeks, I'm thinking and considering and actually doing this. I am getting out a big calendar and mapping a larger idea of transformation that's not just transformation that's me-centered, but also where are the transformation and goals that are centered for others. And the other thing I'm doing is I'm going to get some buddies to help me. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. and a time for every purpose under heaven. In his New York Times op-ed column from it's a couple of years ago now, titled Greeting the New Year, Charles M. Blow wrote that this is his idea, this is his favorite time of year, because he connects with the idea of marking endings and beginnings. The idea, he connects that the ideas of commemoration and anticipation. So endings and beginnings. Now, I always think of spring as the season that exemplifies the concept of new beginnings, at least in the Northern Hemisphere. And yet here it is in kind of the dead of winter, and the new year begins a little over a week after the winter solstice. Those of us who mark time with the Gregorian calendar will we've celebrated the new year just in this time. And I have always wondered why we celebrate New Year's at the start of January, right? To some degree, this is somewhat arbitrary, right? It was decided by people at a time and a context and made decisions on this. So why? And I've done some reading and learned that January 1st, which would be the 8th day of Jesus's life, marked the feast of the circumcision of Christ. Now, I'm not a church historian, so I'm not clear why Pope Gregory decided this particular feast should mark the start of the new year. But regardless of how or why, the calendar that we use that was created for us, January 1st, marks this start of the new year. So what does it mean for us to start and to mark new beginnings at the time of the longest nights? I'm beginning to be of the mind that it has much to do with the place of hope and faith within the cycle of life. You know, it's one thing to experience the green shoots of the crocus and with confidence be able to proclaim the earth is being reborn, the new year is here. It's an entirely different thing to be in the midst of the shortest days and the longest nights and proclaim that from right here in the midst of winter, the new year is born. There's something powerful in this. Now, I would venture to guess that for many of us, new beginnings started just like that. It was at our lowest point, at our bottom, that we cried out, yes, I am here. Things are about as rough as I can imagine them, but this is where I am. I can't wait for things to get better, to change. My new life must start now. From the depths of this winter, where I witness no sign of spring, the new year starts now. Now that takes faith, and that takes hope. Faith. So faith has been defined as that which allows you to accept that which you cannot understand. So here we are, January, in the enveloping night and the cold. Hope and faith give us the courage and imagination to acknowledge what is passing and past and to consider something new, even if we can't imagine it yet. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. The blessing of a new year. To bless is to bestow good upon. What and who do you ask blessings for as we begin 2022? What do you wish to be made new in this time of incubation? Let's take a moment in silence to think about that. And then if you want to, you can either speak a word into this sacred space that we're sharing together in our boxes here, or if you want to type it into the chat, speak that name, type that word, and it will be blessed. May you be blessed. May you be blessed in not doing everything at once, remembering there is a season, a time for every purpose. May you be blessed in finding companions to join you along the way. Change seems to happen most effectively when it is done slowly and with companions. We recognize that in the wonderful story that Reverend Elizabeth shared earlier. Dr. Martin Luther King did those big words were not just spoken and magically things changed. It took decades, and it is still taking decades. But it is also with community, with others, gathering those forces. Not just to say that we want this to happen, to actually create the change, this spiritual experience. May you be blessed as you think back to what has been and embody hope and faith as you imagine forward, living into what is to be. To everything, there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven. Amen, and blessed be.
Thank you so much for that blessing, Reverend Julie. This is a song that sounds much better when everyone is singing. So please rise in body or in spirit and join me and sing some harmony. Sing the melody if you feel like it, but sing.
Before the benediction, I just want to thank everybody, musicians, Margot, Reverend Elizabeth, all the folks behind the scenes that have made this worship possible today, for bringing all of the gifts that you have brought. Thank you so much. And thank you for inviting me to be with you today. I hope to be able to join you again in person in a square however it works, thank you. So the benediction this morning comes from the Reverend Nadia Boltzweber. There is no resolution that, if kept, will make you more worthy of love. You as your actual self and not some made-up ideal are already worthy. Amen. Blessed be. Join us in peace.